It is indeed a big day for Ghana in the world of business and, of course, in the world of sports. Hello and welcome to Business Live. Coming up in our headlines, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta presents the 2023 budget, which hinged on 7-point agenda for economic transformation.
This budget is therefore anchored on a 7-point agenda aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability and accelerating our economic transformation as articulated in the post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth, PCPEG.
Former Finance Minister Seth Terkper described the increase in the VAT as a move that will increase prices of goods and services in the country.
So you are adding the 2.5. So we have crossed 20%, which is the highest, rate in the majority of countries. Ghana has crossed that threshold.
Business community expresses mixed feelings about the 2023 budget. We'll hear from President of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
To achieve the target requires that you have to do certain things, A, B, C, D. So it shouldn't be just statements. All the things that they have said that they are going to do to be able to achieve this, we should all support in doing that.
We've got details of these and many others lined up for you. Please stay on. Pleasure, you could stay on. I am Pious Kojo Backah, and look now at our stories. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has pointed out that the 2023 budget is anchored on a 7-point agenda aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability and accelerating Ghana's economic transformation as articulated in the post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth. These comprise an agenda to aggressively mobilize domestic revenue, streamline and rationalize expenditures, boost local productive capacity, promote and diversify exports, promote the poor and vulnerable, expand digital and climate-responsive physical infrastructure, and implement structural and public sector reforms.
This budget is therefore anchored on a 7-point agenda aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability and accelerating our economic transformation as articulated in the post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth, PCPEG. These comprise an agenda to 1. Aggressively mobilize domestic revenue, 2. Streamline and rationalize expenditures, 3. Boost local productive capacity, 4. Promote and diversify exports, 5. Protect the poor and vulnerable, 6. Expand digital and climate-responsive fiscal infrastructure, and 7. Implement structural and public sector reforms. To achieve these, there are 3 critical imperatives: successfully negotiating a strong IMF program, coordinating an equitable debt operations program, and attracting significant green investments. This will enable us to generate substantial revenue, create needed fiscal space for the provision of essential public services, and facilitate the implementation of the PCPEG program to revitalize and transform the economy. Mr. Speaker, we will undertake the following actions, initiatives, and interventions under the 7-point agenda. To aggressively mobilize domestic revenue will, among others, 1. Increase VAT rate by 2.5% to directly support our roads and digitalization agenda. Fast-track the implementation of the Unified Property Rate Platform Program in 2023, and review the E-Levy Act, and more specifically, reduce the headline rate from 1.5% to 1% of the transaction value, as well as the removal of the daily threshold. 3. To boost local productive capacity, We will, among others, cut the imports of public sector institutions that rely on imports, either for inputs or consumption, by 50%, and would work with the Ghana Audit Service and Internal Audit Agency to ensure compliance, support the aggressive production of strategic subsidies, including the list disclosed at the President's last address to the nation, support large-scale agriculture and agribusiness interventions through the Development Bank of Ghana and ADB Bank, introduce policies for the protection and incubation newly formed domestic industries to allow them to make the goods produced here competitive for local consumption and also for exports.
Meanwhile, former Finance Minister Seth Terkper has described the increase in the VAT as a move that will increase prices of goods and services in the country. According to him, Ghana is among the countries with the highest VAT in the world.
When they did not start with 12.5% as a standard rate, in substance, the VAT rate was 17.5% plus the addition, which Chamber of Commerce put at 19.5. So you are adding the 2.5. So we have crossed 20%, which is the highest, rate in the majority of countries. Ghana has crossed that threshold. Why is it so important? We don't have details because remember the GET Fund and NHIL were taken from the base of the VAT and caused straight levies, in addition to 16 other levies. Ghana has about 18 levies. I can forward it. If we have time, I think I have it, I can show it. So all these levies are in place. But the reason it's important is that the beauty of VAT is that because it's a consumer tax, a tax on the consumer, not on business. Business are only agents for collection. If a business collects the tax from another business, it is deemed to be a tax on inputs. That's what we call the inputs, input tax, input VAT. And therefore, when the business finishes production, they are allowed and they collect the output VAT. They do not add the VAT they paid on inputs because they will be allowed to offset it against the VAT they paid on output. I hope I'm not being too technical at this stage. So what is paid is a net. So let me use figures. If I paid VAT of, let's say, 100, on my inputs, including import VAT, and I produce, of course, value addition, so I charge VAT of 120. The 100 has been collected at the port. The 100 has been collected, by my suppliers and paid to GRA. But because it's not a tax on my inputs, I'll deduct the 100 from the 120 and pay only 20, to GRA because GRA has already got 100. That's the beauty of VAT. So if you remove, the GET Fund and the NHIL from the base, that is 5%, and say that the rate is 12.5%, when in substance, you are denying, that portion, you are denying, the input tax credit or ultimately refunds to businesses, then it was one of the factors that was increasing costs and prices and inflation.
Former Finance Minister Seth Terkper. Let's stay a while longer on this, and joining me via Zoom to discuss is Associate Professor at Andrews University in the USA, Dr. William Pripra. Grateful, Doc, you could join me. What is your view on some of the macroeconomic targets for next year as outlined by the Minister of Finance?
Good evening. Thank you for calling me at this time. I know Ghana is playing. A lot of people will be not having their minds here, but we can still discuss
certainly
the finance. Yeah. So let me state that this is the first time since NPP came into power that they have presented a budget without a team.
And when you say without a team, what does that mean?
From 2016, all the budget that has been presented by the minister comes with a central team,
okay,
upon which all the policies are derived from. But this one did not come with a team, but the minister stated that it is based on a 6-point agenda The first one is on revenue generation, and the second one which focus on expenditure control. On the micro indicators, the one that really caught my attention is the inflation target for 2023, which is set at 18%. Currently, we are at 40.4. I'm not sure we'll be able to achieve that in 2023 because the indices which underpinning the high rate in inflation is not being addressed, which is the devaluation of the currency against major foreign currencies. And we know the impact of these things. We must also note that the capital expenditure line item, to me, looks a little bit huge of 27.694 million Ghana cedis, 3.5% of GDP. I was thinking that at the time that we are in our country, prudent measures will require us to reduce our capital expenditure. With a total budget expenditure of 205 million Ghana cedis, that line item would have been, I'm sure, probably we have to look at it. 3.5% of GDP is too high when you are showing a deficit over 100 million Ghana cedis. We cannot talk too much about compensation, which is about 5.6% of GDP because of the inflationary effect. Right. Maybe, in my mind, the minister is thinking that other capital expenditures for 2020, 2021, which they were not able to do, specifically on the Agenda 111 in relation to the hospitals, probably they think that they may have room to do it in 2023 because election is coming in 2024.
All right, let me find this from you. What do you make of the increase in VAT to 15%? And we know consumption tax could also cause prices to go up. Is it a good move, you would say?
So if you read the lines of the minister, he's just robbing Peter to pay Paul. Remember, he's reduced the e-levy to 1%, so the 0.5% he's added that one. And then if you remember, road toll was cancelled in 2021 budget, 2022 budget. So now he brings it back into the VAT computation. So his line was straight. The 2.5% additional VAT is coming in to support the digitization, which is the e-levy. This time he didn't want to use e-levy. And then to support road, which is really to replace the road levy toll that was removed. So in effect, prices of goods will be going up. In terms of cash flow, now our VAT is about 21.9%. The impact is going to be felt by Ghanaians directly because it is an indirect tax. The other option will be would Ghanaians be able to, or companies or tax collectors willing to return the tax to government, because in taxation, there's something we call the Lavin curve. When you set the tax too high, you start to see that people will either evade the tax or avoid the tax. So this is something that we may see it coming in 2023.
We also saw some drastic measures taken by government by way of expenditure. Would you describe the budget as an austere one, looking at measures taken to cut government expenditure? Would you agree with me on that?
I mean, they are.
Hello, Doc. I guess Doc's phone is frozen, and we will try and get back to him. As and when we do that, we will get him to speak to the issues. But we have to tell you that we are talking about the 2023 budget. All right, so I'm told he's back on. So let's connect back to Doc Williams, prepare to make his submission. Doc, we can hear you now.
So the control measures are very good, but its implementation and monitoring is a significant issue. The minister is relying on internal audit agency to help them to have this achieved. If you go into the effect, most of the MMDAs and the rest don't have in-house internal auditors. They only come after the expenditure has been occurred. So how is the internal audit going to help to control these expenditure items? The commitment is on government to make sure that releasing of funds will be scrutinized very well before funds are released, not just because it has been approved in the budget, then the funds are released. In the budget, the minister mentioned about it that quarterly releases of funds will be done judiciously. We are hoping that the new platform that he mentioned that they are going to use to do funds allocation to ministries, departments, and agencies will work efficiently. Relying on internal auditors to help achieve this expenditure control is not something that will be very visible at this moment.
Interesting. And we do know that government has given assurance that an IMF deal will be reached soon in the budget. Now, from what you said, do you think this budget sends a good signal to the IMF? And are we likely to achieve that?
If you look at it, most of the conditions that normally comes from IMF are well stated in this budget. So there's a freeze on employment in both public and civil service. Some expenditure control items have been mentioned. Significantly, public service, they are going to see restructuring, or he put it when they say restructuring. So definitely there will be some form of layoffs coming in the restructuring process. No ministries are going to be created, and so these measures are already in line with IMF's conditionalities. It's really something that is going to come up, and I'm sure IMF is already happy with seeing the things listed in the budget to control expenditure.
Grateful, Dr. William Sripra, for sharing your perspective with us on the budget. We are indeed grateful. Let's move away from William Sripra and touch on this story. Though on the budget, the business community has greeted the 2023 budget with some mixed feelings, but says there is some hope. Here is President of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bedouabuaji, reacting to the 2023 budget.
To achieve the target requires that you have to do certain things, A, B, C, D. So it shouldn't be just statements. All the things that they have said that they are going to do to be able to achieve this, we should all support in doing that. I know that the VAT increment is not in the interest of even businesses and that of consumers. And for me, I'm not happy, and the business community, we are not happy about it. One thing that I also want to talk about is the e-levy. In fact, there was a reason why the minimum threshold was there, just to support certain group of people.
Right.
Vulnerable. Are they telling us that those vulnerable people are not there? What would have been the effect of even keeping or even increasing those that threshold so that we give leeway to the vulnerable? Of course, it's going to bring some hardship to the citizens and then to the business community. I was expecting a relief for the business community. Because if you continue in this tangent, what we are saying is that you are just making businesses in Ghana uncompetitive.
So in other words, there's no relief for the business community.
No, I don't really.
Budget.
Yes,
there's no relief.
I don't really see any relief for us, because tax is very key, and once it goes up, it affects almost everything that we are doing.
Right.
We are going to have the relief when all these targets are achievable, and now we are going to see a reduction in maybe inflation. We are going to see a reduction in policy rates. We are also going to see some stability within the foreign exchange market. And I think that for Ghanaians, let's all come together. As we keep on saying, we are not in normal times. Revenue is key, and businesses, once it's an indirect tax, you don't necessarily have an option. Once you are ready to buy a product that has a VAT component in it, you pay. But for e-levy, I think that they could have also come down from the 1%.
Now, presenting the budget, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta disclosed that the Ministry of Food and Agriculture procured and distributed 19,000 metric tons of improved seeds of cereals, legumes and vegetables, comprising 10,000 metric tons of maize and 6,005 metric tons of rice and 2,000 metric tons of legumes and vegetables. In addition, 150,000 metric tons of organic and inorganic fertilizers were procured and distributed to farmers enrolled under the Planting for Food and Jobs, which enhanced food security across the country. Let's find out from the head of programs and advocacy at Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Dr. Charles Nyaba, if they actually felt the impact. Dr. Nyaba, grateful you could join me tonight on Business Live. Sorry to squeeze you out from watching your football match, but Did you or did your members benefit from these, as outlined by the Finance Minister?
Thank you so much. I think we were keen, myself and my team, and our regional representatives were keenly listening to the Finance Minister. We're hoping to actually hear some good news. But as we speak, all my colleagues are disappointed. If you talk of the ministry procuring seeds and fertilizer for the 2020 planting season, 2022 planting season, as early as last month, you heard us on all the media platforms crying that the seeds that were supplied were not paid. What was supplied in 2021 and 2022 was not paid. So we're hoping to see something in the budget that gives us hope that at least we will get our monies paid, but that is not the case. Now, we are also seeing a series of statements that suggest that the ministry is focusing on improving rice, poultry, tomatoes, maize, and vegetables through commercial farming, and that about 110,000 hectares of land will be cultivated. In fact, this is so vague because we don't know how this is going to be done. There's no statement that tells you whether the support that is coming in this area is going to come in a form of mechanization, in a form of inputs, in a form of financing. That is not clear. So we are still waiting to see the details in the budget appendix. But for what has been presented today, we are so disappointed. There is nothing that points to the fact that we want the agricultural sector to lead the transformation that we've been talking about.
Clearly, from your submission, indeed, you are not satisfied with what you've seen in the budget. But going forward, next year, the ministry will procure a total of about 36,660 metric tons of various improved seeds and, of course, 366,435 metric tons of organic and inorganic fertilizers for distribution. Are you optimistic this will be achieved?
No, I don't think so. Because, see, in the first place, suppliers are not ready to supply for the planting for food and jobs again. If you ask most of the fertilizer companies, they are not ready to work with the government any longer. Because most of them are saying that inputs that were supplied in 2020 as of now hasn't been paid. The seed sector, if you talk to National Seed Traders Association, most of the suppliers under that are disappointed because their seed capital is eroded. You supply seeds since 2020, and as of now, it hasn't been paid. You are not going to be paid with interest. Everything is eroded. So you are now saying that, and they are the same suppliers who we expect to supply again. So to me, I don't have confidence that what the government said is going to materialize, because you need to fulfill your initial commitments before you can ask suppliers to go ahead to supply. If you've not done that, I don't think these suppliers will be ready to do that.
Interesting. Now, the minister also disclosed that under the Ghana Cares in 2023, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture will be supported to adopt the farmer registration database to basically deploy the farmer input subsidy program and enhance efficiency. What does this mean to the sector?
Yeah, so you see, sector players, we've all been talking about lack of a credible database to support in the target. And the ministry has started this initiative since 2017. And as of now, nothing has been done. This year, I think there were pilots in northern part of the country to use some companies to actually get farmer database to support with the input distribution. The problem is not only about the database. As I indicated earlier on, those who have already supplied, government is struggling to pay them. So even if you get the database and you've not been able to fulfill your commitment, where will you get the suppliers to come and supply? You have your database, all right. But the companies are not willing to supply because when they supply to government, it takes about a year or two before they get their payment. And within that period, they continue to pay interest to banks. The value of their capital, their seed capital, is eroded due to depreciation of the currency. So if you are now coming back again, that you are going to invest money to get database to help in input distribution, I doubt it. That after even getting the database, you get companies to supply. That's one. Two, this issue of farmer database is not today's story. Every year, we always hear that the ministry is trying to get farmer database to help in targeting, to help in input distribution. At the end of the day, nothing happens. So how can we be sure that this time around something different will happen? We are not sure about that. So for us, if something drastic will happen, but for what we are seeing, we don't have confidence that it will lead to any changes.
I see. Thank you very much. Dr. Charles Nyaba is the head of programs and advocacy at the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, speaking to us on the back of the 2023 budget. Well, that's our program for tonight. I am Pious Kojo Backah. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Don't forget to say a prayer for Ghana, because we do know that Ghana, as it stands now, is down by a goal to nil. We've got international news by way of business for you.